Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the New Animal Podcast. Almost forgot the name of my own podcast. My name is Colin Bemis, and today we have a multi-talented gentleman on the show today. He has dabbled in comedy and horror. He is an actor, he is a writer and a director, and he also has a graphic novel coming out. This man truly does it all. We are pleased to have on the show today Mr. Josh Ruben. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. Pleasure.
The pleasure is mine. So I usually start at the beginning, which I'm told is a good place to start. I always like to ask, was there a specific film or filmmaker or genre that grabbed you at an early age that kind of set you off on the path of cinema and creativity?
Oh man, I should try. I should have done my research and found out the director of the early, not Sean Cunningham. He was like Friday the 13th 1, but like Friday the 13th 3 and 4, like the movies. It's either the Amblin camp where it's like, oh sure, Spielberg and E.T. and even animated films like America, or Fievel Goes West or whatever, American Tail rather. That's a sequel. It's like either the Amblin upbringing or at the very same time, Rachel, my sister, would show me the Sunday matinee horror movie, which was always as graphic as, Friday 13th could be.
Love it.
So it's probably a tie between Spielberg and, essentially Sean Cunningham in that camp, because I was equally fascinated with what my parents called the ketchup blood movies, as I was with, Jaws, which was right
Sure.
online and certainly not something that like 4-year-olds should watch. But it probably was Jaws, but I was just as impacted by seeing like a masked Hulk chase kids through a barn, and then in my neighborhood with the dark cul-de-sac, let my imagination like run. Think I'd be murdered, and that's why I'm here.
I love it. How old were you when your sister showed you these? Because I think we all have that. I think I was probably 8 or 9 when I.
Yeah, she was 9. She was 9 years my senior, so she probably was like, gosh, she probably was 15, and I was, that math. I was pretty young. I mean,
You're young.
yeah, yeah.
I love it. So did you go to film school? I always like asking our guests if they went, and if they did, what was the positive that you gleaned from it? And did you find anything sorely lacking? Because I find everyone's experience to be very different.
Oh God, I almost said I was lucky enough to not, and
There's virtue in that.
I'll commit to that. Well, yeah, I mean, only insofar as like I'm not in school debt, because uh I went to somehow my parents were convinced sending me to a 2-year acting training program where, albeit Mike Nichols was one of my instructors, who drop in once a week to do a 3-hour masterclass, which was phenomenal. I didn't go to film school. My film school was like pre-film school was, my folks gave me a graduation present in elementary school. It was a Hi8 video camera, and then the next model up was when I graduated high school. So making videos with my buddies through junior high, and then once I moved to the city, taking that camera and then starting to make videos with my buddy Sam Reich, who now runs Dropout College Humor. That was my film school, just truly shooting stuff in order, not thinking about the edit. The edit was the order you shot in, just like we all did when we messed around with cameras.
Yeah.
I didn't go to film school. Film school was just like figuring it out. And the funny thing was, once it became a professional gig, once I joined the staff of College Humor, which was really like graduate school, just shooting every week, that was when I got lost. That's when in the beginning, I couldn't quite do the math to figure out. Now it was so formal. I didn't quite know that a wide shot could become an insert, could become a 2-shot if you wanted to do an elaborate take.
Sure.
I just came from this school of, yeah, let's just fluidly run around and grab everything. But then when you got 15 people looking at you and you're making a salary and all that stuff, I felt sort of stunted in the beginning in a way. And now I feel like my skill level has matched my taste, and now I've finally found an ease in it, even though AI is going to take over and makes me feel like a dinosaur.
I know so many people are talking about the AI thing now. It's unbelievable. That sounds great though. I mean, that's really a trial by fire. You know, I mean,
It
you
is. It
you
was.
put yourself in a position where you really had to learn everything very quickly. Were you taking in a lot of cinema voraciously around this time? Was that always part of it, starting from the young age, or?
Man, I wish I could answer this like Jim Cummings and talk about like, I almost said Godot. Like that's how bad I am. Like, oh, the film that Godot, you know. Uh, no, like I would watch and rewatch the same 19 things. Like
Yeah.
I devour everything Sam Raimi, like Darkman. I've been very public about wanting to play in that world. Uh I watched not just one Jaws, but all four Jawses. I was a voracious horror movie watcher, but not as far back as like Fulci. I'd
Yeah.
seen Phenomena when I was a kid and not really understood what that was. It just, I saw it again recently. It was brilliant. Young Jennifer Connelly. Movies like
So good.
Labyrinth and Defending Your Life and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yes.
I would
Sorry,
watch.
Albert Brooks. I was
Oh
like,
my
I'm a
God! I'd watch the
my
Albert
idol.
Brooks stuff.
Yeah.
He's incredible and an incredible actor.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
It'd be everything from like those kind of Steve Martin, John Hughes comedies and the Friday the 13th, the Jason Liveses.
Yeah.
And I would watch and rewatch the rewatchable stuff. And I think that, to jump ahead a little bit, it's like I think the through line in my films or my film work is in the back of my mind, I have some voice kind of going, yeah, make it rewatchable. I'm always kind of, I think, aspiring to make something that you can put on in the background on a rainy day that you don't
Yeah.
have to pay too much attention to, which probably undercuts the quality of what it's like. No, I want to make those comfort movies people can watch. And that's why I love people saying, man, every winter I want to put on Werewolves or I want to put on Scare Me, and it feels like a comfortable movie. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
Make it rewatchable.
yeah.
That is a great line.
Yeah.
So speaking of Scare Me, you have this very rich history in television and on comedy. What led to Scare Me? How did the project come about? Which I just rewatched last night, by the way, and I absolutely love Scare Me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's where it all started. That's my baby. I mean, it came about because it was a culmination of events. I was hitting a wall in my commercial directing career. I felt like my soul was being sucked out of my eyeballs. The money was good, but I was doing like, kitty litter campaigns and Nick Cannon and Busy Phillips like crafting competitions and whatnot, and everyone was very nice, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I thought, how am I ever going to break through this world and get into narrative? And I realized the only way I could do it was not by writing some movie that needed $10 million, because no one was going to grant a first-time filmmaker that much money. And it doesn't matter how many sketches about boobs and beer and video games I made at College Humor, it wasn't going to happen. So I decided to write something that I could afford that was within, reasonable budget. And part of that inspiration came out of reading Mark and Jay Duplass's Like Brothers.
Yeah, great book.
All about the encouragement. Yeah. The encouragement of, making the $1,000 short. And I'd done certain versions of that. So I essentially wrote a play. I wrote a book that, a screenplay rather could essentially be shot in a black box. And that black box was a cabin. And then was asking Aya Cash, and then my manager suggested Chris Red and Becky Drysdale. It just kind of came together as quickly as that. Not before, of course, recklessly cashing out about 80% of my 401k from my College Humor days, which is only like $26,000, but that's a lot. That was a lot
of money. If that, yeah,
my whatever mid 30s. And then we graciously had some other investors that came in thanks to my management. The biggest being a company called Last Rodeo Studios. This guy, Eamon Downey, who's a fan of mine, thank God, and read the script, thank God. And I think right after Get Out, people were looking for a social kind of messaging.
Excellent timing, yeah.
It really was. And this one was, kind of at the height of Me Too. I was writing angry, which is something you want when you're writing your stuff. And it just happened. And I just wanted to make a thing. So the fact that Shudder was interested blew my bucket list expectations out of the water, and the fact we got into Sundance was beyond my wild. I didn't even think of that. It just kind of happened. Like, okay, sure, yeah, submit it.
Well, you succeeded wildly. In terms of you're excellent at segues, because in terms of festivals, I think a lot of people, the end game is finishing the movie, but then obviously you have to have a plan afterwards. So did you already have a sales rep going into the festival circuit, or how was the process for that?
That's an amazing question. We were extremely fortunate I'm trying to remember the order of events, because we had a cut of the film. I just realized we sat on it for about a year because we were waiting for Sundance. And before before we had gotten the film out there, we did some test screenings, and my management just on a whim sent it to Shudder, which was a new platform really at the time. And they said, they're interested in acquisition if you want to go for it. And I thought, okay, that's really exciting. What would it mean? And what that would mean with Shudder coming aboard, which isn't necessarily a sales agent, but they're a distributor. They said, look, we're incentivized to play the festival. So what you'll get are the you'll get the muscle, and you'll get the name. We'll be able to submit you to various genre festivals or festivals proper with our title on it, and then get you a distributor. So we said, why not? Let's just go for it. This is a small movie. Any amount of money made back immediately is great. And they pushed us to get into Sundance. They pushed us to get into all festivals, but they were able to get it in front of Charlie Sextro, who's the curator of the midnight section at Sundance. Thank God he watched it. Thank God he dug it. And then they, I believe because they're under the AMC umbrella, they were essentially able to, get it to IFC Films, and IFC put it out. And the bummer about COVID, and there are many, our movie was to hit VOD and theaters for a theatrical run that following October 2020.
Yeah.
And I had wrapped Werewolves March in 2020. So I was like, wow, I'm going to end the year like with this little
best
run.
Year ever.
Movie, best year ever. And we didn't get the theatrical, so it went right on the platform. And I think that's why people are still kind of very slowly discovering it. So we didn't have a sales rep, but we had Shudder. We had the sort of cheerleading effort of this incredible platform. I mean, they really are keeping genre filmmakers working. It's just really cool, and taking swings,
Yeah, they're doing a phenomenal job. A quick sidebar question: how difficult was it waiting for Sundance, like making that decision? Because I totally get that, but like determining that was probably the right way to go, and then knowing you were sitting on the film for a while.
I wasn't thinking about Sundance specifically. I was more just kind of like we really took our time to edit it, and truly at that level budget, I'm a producer too, so I was working on trailer art and cutting the trailer with Patrick Lawrence, who's my brilliant editor, and trying to figure out the coolest kind of underground Instagram artists we could go to, like the Creepy Ducks designs and Neil Fraser, and Alex Vincent was awesome. He's this guy who does these kind of VHS style graphics. So putting all that together while at the same time trying to drum up more commercial work to keep the lights on, to keep food on the table and that sort of thing. That was the big focus, was surviving until then. The great thing was about the halfway point through the year, when we had a rough cut, we shared it with a few folks, including the producers at Vanishing Angle, who had just done another werewolf movie, Wolf of Snow Hollow, and done Thunder Road, and they shared it with Ubisoft because they thought I'd be a good candidate for this werewolf movie. And then I pitched on Werewolves Within, and that became my next project very, very quickly. So I was in prep essentially. By the time I was in Sundance, I was about to fly to upstate New York and begin the prep process. It was a really, really insane.
Yeah, what a turnaround. That was gonna be my next question too, is Werewolves Within. I mean, that's unbelievable. And then you wrapped in March 2020.
We wrapped March 9th, 2020. We were in lockdown on the 13th. So I was incredibly lucky. I have filmmaker buddies who were shooting in Serbia and had to yank their project 2 weeks before wrap and stuff, and go back 8 months later with a hazmat suit and shit. We were just like really, it's like the Green Berets talk about. It's like if there's an apocalyptic situation and you have to go into a bunker, you need a routine.
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky to have the routine of the 9 to 5 editing on Zoom with Brett Bachman, with my editor, after I got to come home, take 2 weeks off, and then just jump right back into it while the world was going nuts,
Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned how useful your manager was before, and I like to talk about representation because a lot of people have it, a lot of people don't. How much of your career have you had representation, and kind of how essential is it for filmmakers specifically to have an agent or a manager, so on and so forth? I know it's a general question, but
no, I got you. Well, I'll answer sort of in the tiers of my career. It's like, my early 20s, it's all I wanted. All I wanted was that agent, chasing it. We finally got an agent that believed in us kind of as a sketch group. And we thought that it was going to be the beginning of our career, and it wasn't. What agents and managers really need are clients that can produce and that can bring them things to sell. They don't manifest money or grow money trees. They need to know that you're hungry.
Yeah.
And I always was. I can't sit still. I mean, it's why I'm promoting a graphic novel right now, is because movies take a long time to get going. We just announced this movie at EFM, but we're waiting for financing to come through. I'm like, cool. Well, this is, what else can I do?
Yeah.
What else can I do? So there was, in my very early career, it was impossible to get an agent. Then we got an agent as a sketch group, essentially, before I joined College Humor. And then once we were at College Humor, I believe Principato Young, now Artist First, my still management, they sort of grandfathered all of us cast members of College Humor. So I think we sort of like got management by osmosis, but I made sure to broker a personal relationship, and I did, with Brian Steinberg, who was my first kind of contact. And I showed him that I had other stuff kind of going on.
Yeah.
So it was by my early 30s where I was giving them sellable stuff that took them a bit to, get off the ground. I'd get acting gigs and whatnot before things really got rolling. And I think it's necessary, but this day and age, it's even more accessible now than it was for me to make stuff and put it out there.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I had an Instagram or a TikTok or that YouTube was just kind of accessible and easy to upload stuff, and everything was like a quick, fast upload and shot and this and that and the other thing. I didn't have that back then. It was like we put videos on QuickTime, and Flash was new and all this stuff. I think it's important, but it shouldn't stop anyone. Same thing with Sundance. Same thing with, trying to get into a festival. Not the end of the world if your movie does not. You've made a thing, you put it out there, people will see you have a vision. It's just got to, this is a great thing about the Duplass book, is it has to stink of you. Your movie has to be specifically your thing. And that's why Scare Me was so successful for me personally, is because I wrote to the specifics of everything I wanted to do, making weird voices with my mouth, scene work, listening, like real acting, and also, like what's weirdly my shit. I like walking like a goblin. I like feminism. I like, like listening, acting,
make
and
it you.
Physical comedy. Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
And I just did my best to make it me. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your writing process like? I'm always fascinated by writers, especially with something like Scare Me, which is such a chamber piece. And like you said, it was almost, essentially a play in a black box, and the black box was the cabin. But what was your process in writing that?
In writing that, I started just a very Mametian volley between what I knew was going to be an emasculated, kind of troubled male character and a successful, sort of genius, opinionated woman character. And I just let that tete-a-tete happen. So I kind of followed the thread a little bit. And when I'd hit a wall, what I would do is I knew generally it was going to be an anthology film that didn't leave the campfire. No. I slugged in these sort of unfinished stories from scripts that I just started writing and would hit a wall with as the Fred in me. So the stories, each of the stories in the movie itself, in the anthology, are essentially like cobwebbed old ideas.
Yeah.
So, I would slug those in. I was like, shit, before I knew it, I got to 70 some odd pages, and I was like, I should finish this, and then with the Me Too stuff happening, it was constant inspiration. I would be asking women friends of mine about their situations, uncomfortable situations, and power trip, misogynistic, sexist conversation with men in power and men in their lives, and that would sort of infer or inform my work. And so it was a fast barf. What I like to do is quickly barf all the typos, all the crap, and then go back and comb through it. My problem is that I will almost always send it too soon because I'm too excited to produce. And that's the problem. I need a proofreader.
Yeah.
Even, stuff. Your producers aren't even going to comb through it unless you got a really, really good one.
Yeah.
So my process is like, make sure you know what your engine of the movie is, your drive. You're not writing cool. Make sure you're kind of like writing angry is what I like to call it.
Yeah.
And get it out there, like get it out fast. And then that's when you sculpt,
Yeah. I have one of these, but do you have like a single place where you have all of the, whether it's one sentence or 10 paragraphs, but all of the graveyard of ideas of ideas prior that you can kind of go to? Because I have like a massive list of like film ideas. But I'm just curious, like for
Yeah.
that, did you go through it and skim through it and kind of see what you wanted to pick for Scare Me, or were they kind of
No,
organically there?
not through that. Scare Me came up very kind of organically in one, call it lump. Some ideas are scattered throughout, sure, like various notebooks. I started keeping a Google Doc of just free writing,
Yeah.
and I recently went back and was sort of looking at what might be a short story or an idea. But I've always had, it's funny, every time I journal, I'll list out what the new projects that are gnawing at me are. And it's always a variation of 5 to 7 that feel more fleshed out. But the problem is some of them, more than not, are like cool ideas. It's not enough of a story, but there's
Yeah.
one that emerged when I go, oh, okay, there's an emotional way in here.
Yeah.
I could see myself outlining it, and that's the stuff that they'll almost come to you. But yeah, I always kind of keep a list of things that I know I want to do or spaces I want to play in.
Sure. One more specific screenwriting question. Do you outline the script, or do you kind of sit down and see what comes out? Or are you a voracious outliner like I am?
I wasn't a voracious outliner. At first, I was like writing screenplays like novels, which I do not recommend because I
Yeah.
always page 33 and wonder why I wasn't a genius. I started outlining over the pandemic and have since written, I think, 5 screenplays since
Wow,
2020.
man.
Yeah, some of them have been with my wife too, who's like, she's the voracious outliner. She's like meticulous and
Yeah.
very much about story, and I'm like the chimp with the typewriter. So it's the it's the way to go. You got to outline. You really,
Yeah.
really, and it sucks because it's the plumbing. It's not the fun part, but boy, is it fun to then have this blueprint that keeps you honest.
Yeah.
And
Totally. I find it wonderful. I couldn't write without outlining. I
yeah,
actually find it very fun too, because that's where you're finding all of the little, you can
yeah,
really go ape shit with it. And then,
yeah,
you know,
truly. That's how I have to kind of reframe, or how I've reframed recently, is to kind of go, this is your document to fuck up. This is where all the
yeah,
mess is supposed to be. Yeah.
totally. I talk a lot about how important it is for us to define success for ourselves. And I think especially in film and how expansive it is, it's very easy for us to compare ourselves to other
Oh yeah.
directors, other filmmakers. How have you defined success for yourself and kind of kept yourself sane, but kept yourself from necessarily comparing yourself to others?
That's such a great question. I feel like I've always kind of marched to the beat of my own drum a little bit. I definitely, as my therapist calls it, like despair and compare sometimes.
Yeah.
But I've kept my head above water is like small wins, like even an email, a phone call, collaborating with Brianna Tippett, for example, like on this graphic novel. Uh, they keep me going, and it reminds me, like, it's like that Bob Dylan quote, I'm gonna butcher. It's like anyone who wakes up every day and does what they want to do
Yeah.
is a success. And that's, I feel like that. I feel kind of, I wouldn't go as far as say like self-actualized that way.
Sure.
So lucky today, and you have to hang on to that gratitude. So lucky today to be able to be making some kind of a living doing what I want to be doing, being creative.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great answer. Um, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about being a filmmaker? And I gear this question towards people that are hoping to become filmmakers or first time filmmakers. What are some of the biggest misconceptions?
Uh, that it's easy, that you get to just sit in a chair and tell people what to do, to nitpick a tableau on a screen, and people will, bring you grapes, that it's all like fame, fortune, and ease, and
Yeah.
it's not. Um, the play, especially with the place the industry is in now, is kind of squealing to a halt. With there's a strike that's coming up with the
Yeah.
Writers Guild, rightfully so, and people seem to be very, very particular about what to greenlight. Um, it's it's just difficult. I think the misconception is that you don't have to think of it like running a business. You're running a business, and you can't just
100%.
do, in my opinion, you can't just do one thing. Like my business is, I do College Humor Dropout and make my funny voices and build up my Instagram, my following that way, so that when I am lucky enough to work in television or to direct a film or to have a trailer to share, then I can suddenly say, "Hey, all my fans from those old days, look at this new thing." And I
Yeah.
loved them all going like, "Holy shit, you played a serial killer and Wounded Fawn, and you produced this Jewish daddy-daughter vampire movie, like Blood Relatives. What is this? You're doing a graphic novel so that the fans can kind of overlap and find each other. We're running a business. The misconception is that it's not, I think, and it is. It is. You can't just be an auteur, pounding away at your one script. I strongly believe you've got to have. I know you have to have several things in the cooker to hopefully get one going that hits with some subjective taste of some buyer.
Yeah. No, well, you've certainly proven that, and that's, if there's one takeaway from probably any interview I ever do on this show, is to remind people that it's not just it is a business, and if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to also not only understand the business side of it, but I always encourage people to be a producer rather than to try to get a producer. To understand the ins and outs, understand budgeting, understand scheduling, understand what you're creating, how it's going to sell, because if not, if you don't know that information, it's going to dictate and affect your writing, your directing, and the rest of your career, but also the rest of your project. So I couldn't agree with you more. So Josh, not only are you involved in comedy and college humor, and now this unbelievable filmmaking career, you're now working on DARLA, which is a graphic novel, which I'm so excited about. So why don't you tell me about how that came about and how that was kind of another part of your journey?
I've always wanted to publish something. I published the Scare Me screenplay with my buddy Henry Gonzalez, who did some of the art for it. I love books. I love plays. I probably love books a little too much. I have
No such thing.
More on my shelf, than I've read. More collected than read at this point. But I think especially over throughout the course of the pandemic, they become kind of precious. And I rediscovered just my love of comics. I had a ton as a kid. I loved Tales from the Crypt. I loved Babadook and all things Stephen King and Derry and the Dead Zone. And so some time ago, I actually wrote a script inspired by an article. It was very much like out during the worst beginnings of the Trump era. And I say worst beginnings because it was like when we started to realize there was kind of an infection happening in our country. There were people that were coming out of the woodwork going like, yeah, finally someone who's like me, I'm mad too. And this toxic outlook almost kind of infected the populace, and they were always there. These folks who were sort of narrow-minded in their disposition, and in that sense, in essence, dangerous in their narrow-mindedness. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to kind of like write something about that infection? And someone who is a tragic character that's essentially under a trance by something like a corrupt politician. And so I just kind of, it's like my nod to all things Stephen King. I just started following the thread of this character who, is not inherently a great person whatsoever. It's kind of has this EC comic sort of a vibe in that way. And I wrote it as a screenplay, originally called Annie, and then I realized that's a musical. And then as I just decided, I'll just call it Darla. That's kind of an interesting name.
Sure.
And I couldn't get that movie off the ground. Originally I was gonna pull kind of a Ari Aster short, make it super weird, maybe wear the prosthetics, maybe play my version of like Melissa Leo in Prisoners, make it like a super weird swing of a movie. And then I was like,
amazing.
I'd be kind of fucked up to pull it away from whatever Margot Martindale, if she ever did it, or if we were able to offer the part. So I decided, I duly discovered the work of Brianna Tippett. She's a brilliant illustrator. Discovered her on Instagram. She was doing fan art for my movies. She did beautiful fan art for Scare Me and then for Werewolves. And she put out this book called Rictus. She self-published this book that feels very, is it Charles Burns who did Black Hole? It reminded me of that brilliant graphic novel. And I thought, I'd love to make a book. And we started talking a little bit. And she's like, well, if you ever have anything, you're the writer. I'll illustrate. I'm fast. And I was like, I'm fast. What if I gave you this script? We just talk a little bit about it, and then you go crazy. You adapt it. You do your thing. And I paid her, not nearly what she's worth. I was like, I have these peanuts. What if we start here? And she basically transcribes this 90-page screenplay into a 155-page book.
Wow.
In no time. She's sending me pages every day, every other day. she just blasts it out, and
That's incredible.
I mean, so that's the thing about this book. It's truly indie, truly like, self-financed, self-published. And then my buddy Dooley was beginning a comic book company, two buddies, Mike Perkins and Kevin Miller, called Invader Comics. And I was sort of noticing like, oh, interesting. They're in the comic book business, and I got this. And I was like, maybe I'll just see if they'd be interested in taking this thing on. I share it with them. They really dig it. They give incredible notes, and they think, yeah, let's get it in bookstores. I'm like, wait, what? So there is this kind of, I'm realizing, having been entrenched in the horror community on social media, Twitter and whatnot, how supportive it is. It's very similar with comics. People are really passionate about genre books, about OGNs, as I'm learning the shorthand is, original graphic novel, and horror comics and comics in general. I started buying a bunch again, just like first issues of things at random, not even fully collecting full volumes, just going to, this looks cool, this looks great. You just got so inspired again. So they're publishing it. We're out in bookstores on or around May 31st of this year, which is incredible. And I'm already like looking forward to like meeting people and hopefully shaking hands and doing like, like a mini tour, maybe around LA or
That
whatever.
would be awesome.
Yeah. And then, I honestly, I don't know how people will take this book or perceive it. It is truly like, Scare Me was like quite a blast of my mind. And this one's like even weirder. So it's like so strangely me. Like there's like very, very weird dialogue, strange characters, like, gruesome kind of situations and scenes. And it's kind of very, I guess, I don't know. It reminds me of something like Ari Aster might have done in his 20s, which I don't know if is a great thing. But it, as they say, you got to do this as an artist. It's got to stink of you. Like Darla stinks of me. Like it is very much like as weird and maybe incoherent and unusual.
That's what
And
makes it beautiful, though. I mean,
yeah,
it's
beautiful. Yeah,
it's from you, your soul as a creator, and the collaboration that you had. I have to say, as a side note, it's really nice to hear such positivity about and regarding social media. I think we all wade through the potential cesspool of social media in a lot of ways, but it's nice to hear the reminders that it truly can be social. You can find really, truly wonderful collaborators on social media, and really positive things can come from it. Because I think we're all kind of grounded in nothing with Twitter and all of these things, but you can really find amazing communities, as I think we all have as well, on things like Twitter and
so much. The
Instagram.
horror community's been so supportive.
What a community!
Oh yeah, when Scare Me came out, I was like, Barbara Crampton followed me.
Yeah, I
And,
know.
and Blumhouse and all these schools, like Nathan Ballingrud, like what, the author of American Lake Monsters, and on and on. So yes, I agree. I totally agree. It's brilliant.
It's incredible. I think that crowdfunding is a really beautiful thing, especially in the way that it. I mean, there are positives and negatives to certain variables of it, but I think that it really enables the creators to connect directly with their fans. So you have a Kickstarter going right now for Darla, which again, I cannot wait to support, and I encourage everyone else to do so. But tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, there's a trend in comics, especially in small publishing and indie publishing, where funds are kickstarted to get the printing going, to get the artist paid for the last leg of the work, if that's the deal, or to, like in my instance, I went out of pocket to pay Brianna, so it's paying me back, also paying for PR to push, once we do have the funds, to push the book, to push people to purchase the project. And so we just kind of, in working with Invader, they've suggested different tiers that are really, really incredible. It's like, it's not like just give us money so that we can make this thing. Mike Perkins pep talked me the other day, because I've always kind of poo-pooed, the kickstarting thing, just because it's like, I don't want to barrage you and ask people for things. I want you to just discover the art. But he made a really good point. He's like, anyone who contributes to this in these different tiers, you're going to get limited edition stuff, and you get a lot of it. There are these things called book plates that are basically like gorgeous bookmarks. You get ash cans, so previews of their, essentially like preview booklets of upcoming comics. You get the comic itself, with, depending on the tier that you pay for, limited edition cover and different paper stock. I mean,
Those are awesome.
Original art from Brianna, from other art. I mean, it's just, it goes on and on. And we just added tiers where you want to just do a Zoom call with me. You're a fan of Dropout or College Humor, or you just want to shoot the shit with a horror filmmaker, or you want whatever, pep talk. I think there's a couple tiers like that. We can just hop on a 15, 20, 30-minute conversation, whatever, on Zoom. There's limited number of those. Then there's also like, you want me to read your script? There's one, I think it's for like $1,000. But you want me to read your script and talk to you about it for an hour and just kind of like rap with you about your horror idea? Great. Like, that helps put money in Brianna's pocket. That helps get more of these books printed, get, essentially this indie publishing effort further and out there. And that's what's really exciting. It's not just give me a few bucks to make a thing. There's some really, really cool perks.
Yeah.
Not just when you get to meet me. It's like, have the hardcover stuff. I mean, I kind of was like, should I throw in money too to guarantee that I get some of this original stuff? Like Daniel Crosby made like an original, a brand new just specialty cover. And anyway, it just goes on and on. So yeah, it's been such a thrill to see how many backers have come out of the woodwork. And I'm like trying to make every contributor feel seen. So if they're, saying that they backed it on Twitter, I'll screenshot it and put on my Instagram, say thank you, or same thing on Twitter and this, that, and everything. Even though I'm trying to get off Twitter, I just, reignited my account to promote DARLA. Yeah. It's been really fun to just see the support. It's super, super cool. But I can't not admit my excitement. I can't wait to actually have the thing out there. So I can go, what event are we doing? How many can I bring to whatever, hand out to folks or bring to buddies or sign or whatever, if people want that. I just hope people dig it,
I think they will, Josh. I think they will. And I think it's a great way to connect with fans. I'm really excited for you. Before I let you go, I have one last question.
Yeah.
If you had one bit of advice for your 18-year-old self, it could be film centric, it could be creative centric, doesn't have to be, but if you had one bit of advice for your 18-year-old self, what would it be?
Oh man. I'll have to copy what a psychic said to me. Let go of fear and let go of control. It's all gonna work out. There's that thing about being like an anxious kid. We're like, oh, I've got to control everything and everything's got to be perfect. And it's like, no, mess around. Just keep going, keep following the thread. You're doing great. Yeah.
Keep following the thread. That's great. Josh, this was such a pleasure. You're invited anytime. I'd love to have you on again down the road to promote DARLA. And just so everyone knows, there will be a link to the Kickstarter in our show notes for this episode. So please click on it after you finish listening to this. Support Josh. He's an amazing guy and an incredibly talented artist. Josh, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who supported the comic so far. Appreciate it.
Josh, we'll talk soon. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Colin. This was awesome.
Oh, the pleasure was mine. We'll have you on again.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right. Bye, Josh.
All right, bye.